Look at this pen. Why did it fall? You'd probably say gravity force or some kind of natural power. But tell me this, have you ever actually seen this power at work? What if this whole idea of cause and effect is but a phantom created by our brains? What if there are no causes and effects? What if you aren't the cause of this video playing and you aren't the effect of your parents having a little fun? Sounds crazy, right? Well, to the philosopher David Hume, this seemed completely obvious. To understand this, we need to look at how our minds work. Now play along with me for a second. Think of absolutely anything. What did you think of? A cat, your car, a person, a specific color? No matter what you thought of, let's agree you had an idea of that thing. But where did that idea come from? You didn't create it out of nowhere, right? You had to experience it first. You had to actually see a cat or the color red. Let's call these raw original experiences impressions. All of our ideas come from these impressions. Of course, we can dream up original ideas, but their building blocks are always simple past experiences. For example, you won't find a unicorn in nature, but you will find horses and horns. So even though we've never actually seen a unicorn, we just combine the impressions of a horse and a horn in a new way. Simply put, up to this point, we understood that every idea must come from an impression. Now, why is this even important? Because it is the ultimate test to see if our ideas actually see something real or are just complete nonsense. If an idea perfectly matches the original experience that caused it, well then it's valid. But if an idea doesn't match a real experience, it's just a fantasy. Now take the unicorn again. Is our idea of a unicorn based on actually seeing one? Well, no, clearly not. The unicorn is a fantasy because it's not based on a direct, real-world impression. And this test applies to everything. So if we claim to have this grand idea of power driving the laws of nature, we need to be able to point to the exact real-world experience that gave us that idea. If we can't find it, then the idea of power and cause and effect is just a fantasy. So let's hunt for this impression. Now, in what places can we look for these impressions? Well, let's start with single one-time experiences. Let's say a strong gust of wind blows, and right after a man falls out of a balcony. Did we actually see the wind's power here? No. We saw a sequence, but we didn't see a hidden connection. Just looking at an object for the first time, you can't really predict what it will do. So the impression of power isn't out there in single events. Let's look inside of ourselves instead. So what about our will being able to move our bodies? Try lifting your arm right now. You willed it, and it happened, but did you feel some fundamental law of nature doing it? If you did, you should be able to explain exactly how that power works. How does a non-physical thought translate into electrical impulses, firing nerves and moving flesh? We have no idea. We just know that the thought happened and then the arm moved. If we actually experienced the raw power behind it, we could explain this mind-power connection perfectly, but we can't. And the same goes for the mind controlling itself. We might say that we feel the power of our will commanding us to think of something or to accept or to reject an idea, and somewhere here we can find the experience of power, right? But try not to think of a pink elephant for the next 5 seconds. You failed, right? We can't even explain why we can control our thoughts sometimes, and other times we completely lose focus. The deep mechanics of our own minds are a secret to us, and who is so daring to comment about the nature of the mind and the nature of ideas and how they interconnect? So we cannot find any impression of power here either, or else we could explain these deep mechanics. Finally, let's move on to the last large group of experiences we call repeated experiences. What if we see one thing follow another thing thousands or maybe even millions of times? For example, lightning and then thunder. Maybe here we can find power and then cause and effect. But Hume says 1,000, 1,000,000 or 10 billion experiences are logically no different from just one. Think about what a massive leap it is to say that just because something happens 10, 100 or even thousands of times, it will always happen. Hume would say that leap is absurd. We still aren't experiencing any actual power. We still don't see any hidden wires connecting the cause and effect. But something does happen to us here. When we see things happen together repeatedly, our brains form a habit. Like when a dog is conditioned to hear a bell and then get a treat, when it hears that bell over and over again, it obviously expects a treat. And we are exactly the same. We see lightning and our imagination automatically anticipates thunder. And that is the true origin of our idea of power and cause and effect. It is simple habit. The original experience that gives us the idea of power isn't out there in the universe, it's in here, in our heads. It's the feeling of habit. The feeling of our imagination jumping from one event to the next. We see things follow each other in time, and we just jump to the conclusion that they will always follow the same chain. We trick ourselves into thinking there is some fundamental law at work. But since this idea isn't based on actually seeing power, but just seeing events happen in sequence, it's all just imagination. The pen falls, yes, but not because we can actually see gravity causing it. That thing we call true power is totally invisible to us. Therefore, Hume says trying to claim that we understand the fundamental laws of nature is completely empty talk. In fact, we cannot even have the goal of trying to attain them, because they are simply not available to our human experience. Now, does this mean that science is useless? Absolutely not. In fact, Hume was a freak for science. Science is the most brilliant, systematic observation of our habits. It is incredibly good at telling us what follows what and in what exact proportions. It perfectly maps the patterns of the universe, but it doesn't tell us why they must follow. We can master the rules of the game, but the true power running the code, well, it always remains a phantom. Thanks for watching, and Hume says to subscribe. Goodbye.